But one day he looked at me and he said, I'm going to buy the Commodore for $10 million. I'm going to get Jay Pritzker at Hyatt to manage it, turn it into a Hyatt. And I'm going to get Equitable to provide $75 million to rehabilitate it. To the point where it's almost like new construction. I'm going to tear it down to the skeleton and then redo it. And I said, you have really gone crazy.
There was more exaggeration than truth in the way Trump lined up his partners for this project by suggesting he already had the option on the hotel when he didn't. Years later, he'd patent tactics like this, calling them truthful hyperbole. Trump's men went to work obtaining necessary approvals and huge tax breaks designed for construction of hospitals and low-income housing. Lawyer Roy Cohn was on the job, as was Stanley Friedman, a deputy mayor who would soon join Cohn's firm. Years later, in an unrelated matter, Friedman went to jail for his part in one of the city's worst corruption scandals. Back then, the project was approved on the last day of the Beam administration. Trump and his upscale hotel walked off with one of the largest tax breaks in city history, worth an estimated $200 million.
I got everything I wanted. 40 years of tax abatement. People would say, how did you get 40 years? I said, because I didn't ask for 50. It was so easy.
I don't blame Donald Trump for asking for whatever he could. He's a private developer in business to make money. He had no obligation to the city. In fact, he was being helpful because without him, the site might not have been developed. It's up to the city, to the Board of Estimate, to the mayor to stand fast and to negotiate a deal which not only allowed the property to be developed, but was in the best financial interest of the taxpayers for that time and for the future. That the city failed to do.
Trump was no longer a kid from Brooklyn. He was an established developer and something else. He was the king of tax abatements. In the 1980s, other developers would follow his lead until building luxury housing with tax abatements became almost as popular as junk bonds and yellow ties. There's nothing more pleasing to a developer than the words, "no money down." At the Commodore Hotel, Trump saw firsthand the incredible lightness of leverage, so he tried it again. No rundown neighborhood to build up this time, though. It was literally a Tiffany location, adjacent to the famed store on Fifth Avenue in the heart of Manhattan. Here he would build an edifice to himself. A retail atrium, all marble and bronze, 13 floors of offices, the rest expensive apartments. Trump Tower.
Donald called me up one day in my office at about 11:45 and said, meet me at Bonwit Teller in 15 minutes. Naturally, I dropped everything I was doing and came right over here. The first thing Donald said, isn't this the greatest location in the world? We're going to build the most exciting building in the world here.
If the Hyatt had been a term paper in doing business in New York, the Tower was a doctoral thesis. Here's how it worked. Again, get someone to finance it. Equitable had been in on the Hyatt and owned the land under Bonwitz. For a 50% interest, Equitable would pay him to build. Then get the players who can deal with the city, state, and community. Again, Roy Cohn came on board. Finally, find a way to get approval to replace a 7-story building with a 58-story tower.
Trump was determined to have every square foot he could have, and so the battle began. And it took us 15 months with a lot of shivers up our backs, never knowing whether we were going to win or not win. But Trump is a brilliant taskmaster at maneuvering behind the scenes politically as well as in the real estate world. And he succeeded.
Once again, Trump got millions in tax abatements by finding a loophole in a law designed to promote middle-income housing. To neutralize the opposition in future battles, he soon hired the city's housing chief, who had opposed him on those tax abatements.